Hey guys, TrepChains here with an updated Barbarian build guide for the ground stomp zBarb. I feel like the first thing to mention with this build is really everyone has to be quite closely in sync to be running this in terms of the builds in sync. For example, because of the CC requirements of ground stomp to actually work, it does require pretty much no CC or very minimal on other players. Unfortunately, that affects my Zmonk, particularly with the Cyclone Strike often being removed. But also in terms of other characters, in that timing is really important on a lot of these things, so you need to have communication within the team if you really want to be ground stomping at the most optimal times, and you don't want to ground stomp too much or the CC resistance will build up. Okay, so playing with a Star Pact Meteor Wizard, which is the present meta still going into patch 2.6.7 and season 19, may change in the future, but that's what I'm going to talk about for now. The Star Pact Meteor Wizard is dropping a meteor every 2 full cycles of Convention of Elements. So that's every second arcane, which is effectively every 32 seconds because there's 4 elements and they're 4 seconds each. So you need to have the pool prepared for that every 32 seconds. Now, you obviously don't know when this is, but you kind of get a feel for it after a while, but you can ask the Wiz to communicate. The important things I find I need to hear is with when the Wizard is dropping out of Archon, number 1. And number 2, when they're about 6 seconds before they drop. And let's say they're dropping on the middle of their arcane cycle, then that's, the start of the previous element. So they should be able to make that call when 6 seconds is. Why 6 seconds? I personally still prefer running this zBarb with strong arms. This particular run I'm showing, I think I'm wearing Nemesis instead of strong arms. But assuming that I'm wearing strong arms, which is the build I'm going to recommend today, strong arms has an effect for 6 seconds after the stomp. So you really want to be stomping in the last 6 seconds before the meteor drop to make sure your strong arms are procced on all the mobs. So it's preferable if someone else is wearing the strong arms and the barb doesn't have to, and then we can time the final stomp in the last 6 seconds before the meteor drops to make sure the strong arms are procced, and that's great. As I say, you've got to be aware you don't want to stomp too much. So you're trying to stomp, like the last stomp I'd say before would be about when that wizard is dropping out of Archon and then not again. Also, you got to think about your charge. You can see me charging there. That is going to stun the mobs as well. So ideally, you want to be charging more when you're further away from the party. When you're coming back to the pack, that last little bit, you don't really want to charge into it if possible. You kind of want to be running for that so that you're not stunning the mobs as well, because you've got a lot of stuns within your barb. For the case that no one else is wearing Nemesis braces, you might have to and therefore drop your strong arms, so keep that in mind. If that's the case, everything I say about strong arms timing is pretty much irrelevant here. Okay, so your general task as you're running around the GR is basically doing all the pulls, making sure they're there for the wizard's drops, and doing all the setups. Really kind of picking those setup points is normally your job, but it depends. Some groups the wizard will do it, some groups the RGK will do it, some groups, maybe if you're in my group, the monk might do it, but it is often the barb's job. And then a lot of buffs. So on your skill bar you have buffs like Warcry, Veteran's Warning, Threatening Shout, Falter, Ignore Pain, Mob Rule. You need to be hitting them pretty regularly. As you move through the rift, Ignore Pain, assuming you've got the correct belt, will last for about 11 seconds. So you want to be going out away from the pack and back in and making sure Ignore Pain's always on the boss. Try not to hit Ignore Pain when you're away from the pack. That's one of the critical things helping keep your party alive. Your other buffs you can kind of hit as you go. They've got a lot shorter cooldowns, and they're still going to help your party when you get back to the party. So yeah, I think that's kind of it for maybe what you do when you're in there. You charge around to move quickly, but you try and run back in, do your stomp, do an early stomp probably. Then you may do a stomp about when the wizard drops out of Archon if that's not at the time, you're exactly pulling. And then trying to do one last stomp within that last 6 seconds. And hopefully your wizard communicates with you so you know when that is. The other thing about Stomp worth noting is that it works best when you kind of do it on an open area of ground, like not in the middle of the pack. So you're often trying to do it towards an edge of the pack so it moves the pack around a bit, but that's where you actually have the best shot at getting those mobs the closest together, which is going to help your trash clearer most with the area damage. So one other thing worth considering is how the ground stomp barb works now with the boss fights, and importantly in where we're going in patch 2.6.7 and season 19, we're changing our Rift Guardian killer from a necromancer, which has been for a long time, in which case the CC is very important, to a Crusader who overall I'm going to say CC is less important for, although it does still affect the fight. So quickly talking about the Rift Guardian fight now. First up, with the Necromancer as it was, you pretty much did not want to CC the boss at all because you didn't want to potentially ruin Land of the Dead cycles, apart from if asked. On some of the Thorns RGKs, you'd be asked to stun at a certain point, but most of the other time you're avoiding the stuns. Now, that's not really necessary with the Crusader. So, for the Crusader, what you want to be doing is keeping up your buffs. So that's your Ignore Pain, Mob Rule, Warcry, Veterans Warning, and Threatening Shout Falter. Now, you'd be doing that on any Rift Guardian, but don't forget them here. And then you want to be throwing your Ancient Spear occasionally, kind of as often as you can, but you will maybe run out of resource a little bit. So you want to keep it up because that's going to proc Strong Arms on the boss, assuming that you are wearing Strong Arms that somebody else is wearing the Nemesis. So you want to be throwing that spear out to proc those Strong Arms. Now, the other thing you want to be doing is that stuns do actually help the Crusader. So the Crusader has some braces where the damage is increased if something is stunned and immobilized, etc. So you can charge the boss. That is allowed. So you can use your charge there occasionally. And you can also ground stomp the boss. Now, because the Crusader's build is based around the Holy Cycle, the best time to be using your ground stomp will be at the start of the Crusader's Holy Cycle. This helps keep the boss still for the Crusader's Holy Cycle and ensures there's a stun applied to help proc the braces. Obviously, you'll need your Crusader to communicate that. So if your Crusader lets you know when the Holy Cycle is, you can ground stomp the boss then is best because that's a longer cooldown, but then do your charges on the boss in between. I think that's most of the current gameplay covered, so I'm going to move into game to look over the gear and skills. Okay, in game now to have a bit of a look at my zBarb. This is my non-season zBarb, so I do have a lot of paragon and some pretty reasonable gear, I think, but you'll get the gist. So, starting with gear, important things we're looking for here is really cooldown. And this is primarily to make sure we have our Ignore Pain cooldown. And typically I say you want at least around 63%. 63% something to kind of aim for. Make sure you've got plenty of cooldown there. And then your next roles of importance are really survivability. So things like all resistance, vitality, life percent, etc. And then some attack speed does help on things like, Furious Charge or Ancient Spear, just to get those a little bit quicker. But yeah, that's kind of what you're looking for. So yeah, running 4-piece Raycore set, and importantly, 4-piece Raycore gives us every rune of Furious Charge. So technically it doesn't really matter what you put as your Furious Charge rune here. You are going to get every rune. Keep in mind that does include a freeze rune, so that's one of the reasons it does CC when you're Furious Charging around. So, The 2-piece set bonus is also important because Furious Charge refunds a charge if it only hits one enemy. If it only hits one, you're going to get a charge back, and there's something else we're wearing that if you hit like 3 or more, you get charges back. So you're just trying to hit enemies as you move around, and then you can Furious Charge a lot. Okay. So stats on this, as I say, we're looking for cooldown, survivability, and then maybe attack speed. Okay, so you can see these shoulders are pretty well rolled. I've got the cooldown there. And then strength, fit, resist all is pretty good. And even my secondaries on this are pretty good. I think that's a pretty good piece. Okay, on my gloves on this, again, got my cooldown roll, got my resist all roll, some strength and fit there. Pretty good rolls on those gloves. Chest armor here, resist all, strength and fit. Again, pretty good rolls to have on that. And pants, resist all, strength and fit. So you can see here I'm really rolling to those resistances where I can on every piece. Okay. So, supporting legendary, starting with Leoric's Crown. This is going to give you cooldown. So you want those survivability stats again. I don't have all resist on this particular one. I've got that secondary resist, but I've got the percent life there, fit and dex, and importantly the cooldown gem in the helm with 100% orange stat there. So your orange stat on Leoric's Crown ranges from 75 to 100%. I typically say, unless you're really early season, you definitely want 95% plus. It's not that hard to get on that, and I would take something with a higher orange stat typically and worse other stats because cooldown is really important. Pride of Cassius, so this is one of the options for wearing. So you've got 2 belts, one's in your cube and one is what you're wearing. So if you are wearing the Pride of Cassius, you need to make sure it is a 6-second one. You need that to get your 11 seconds of Ignore Pain. So looking for 6 seconds there is number 1 on Pride of Cassius, and then survivability stats. So this one doesn't have Vit, but I've got resist on there, percent life, armor, and strength. It'd be great if, you know, that armor was a Vit instead. It would be even better. Now your other belt is Chuniak's Chain. I do have it in the cube right now, but you can wear that and cube. Pride of Cassius, depending on what you've got best, keeping in mind this orange stat on Pride of Cassius is really important. So if you don't have a 6-second one, maybe it's best in the cube. Illusionary Boots helps you to run through mobs. Now, on this Stomp version, this is really critical because while you're charging, like while you're outside of the pack a lot, that last run into the pack, you want to do just running wherever possible to avoid the CC of a stun. To do that, you're going to need to move unhindered through enemies. So absolutely critical. You have illusory boots, and these are from bounties. Stats on those, these are really quite good. I've got dex strength, same for zBarb. Doesn't matter, they both give you armor, vitality, resist all, and some extra armor on those. Strong arms. As I say, I do recommend you run this build with strong arms. These aren't the best roll to strong arms ever. They're just what I'm using here. But 30% orange stat is pretty important if you're running with strong arms, and then you want survivability. So strength or dex. Vit on those is great. And then some resist to all would be good, and you know, maybe some, I assume they roll with some armor, or life per second's fine on those really, because they've got other rolls like crit, which you don't need. Okay. So, as I say, the other option, if nobody else is wearing Nemesis, is you'd want to wear Nemesis, and these have better rolls on them. So I'd like these kind of rolls on those strong arms, but the orange stat of strong arms is really good. So if you're wearing the Nemesis version, strength, fit, resist all, armor, they're quite well rolled braces there you could be wearing. Okay, jewelry. So Flavor of Time. So this is a new legendary in patch 2.6.6, I believe. And pylons last twice as long. So that's, for you, what matters. Double conduit, double cooldown. You know, they're the most critical things. So double channeling, double conduit is going to really help you most. So wear it. Hey, a double shield is nice. Never hurt anyone. So it's useful to wear. On this, again, cooldown and survivability stats. I've got some useless crit hit damage. This always rolls with movement speed, so that's what I've rolled off here. But it does have Vit, resist all, and cooldown at 8%, so that's pretty reasonable, really. I've just got one useless stat there with the crit hit damage. Oculus ring, you want those rings spawning to support your DPS up to 85%, so closer to 85 the better. And then cooldown, critical, I keep saying that. And then survivability, so you can see that I've just got some dex and obsidian ring. So again, when you're looking at your obsidian ring, it will never roll with a socket. You pretty much always roll the crit off on this build. In terms of your preferences of the other stats, cooldown is most important, closest to 8, then attack speed closest to 7, and then reduce all resource cost up to 8 would be your order of preference on those stats. Okay, weapons. So I'm running with Istvan set, so Slanderer and Little Rogue. I prefer to run these with cooldown first, then attack speed and vitality where possible, so these both have that. I'd rather be running a non-ancient with the right stats than an ancient with the wrong stats. Importantly on these, you really want to make sure that there is no secondary CC, and similarly with your braces. Braces often roll with secondary CC as well, but you don't really want secondary CC on anywhere, so you don't really want CC there. I say it's not so important now, but it will affect your stomps, I guess, if it procs, so you try and avoid it. So preferably no secondary CC, but at least it doesn't stuff up a necromancer anymore. Okay. Normal gems, running cooldown in the helm, obviously, resist all in the armor pieces, and life per hit in the weapons. Some people will swap out one of these life per hit gems for a gem of ease, the experience legendary gem in one of the weapons, and that's okay. If that's what you want to do, you can get some more experience. That's fine. Okay, legendary gems. So I personally run Gogok of Swiftness, so that's giving me attack speed, dodge, and importantly, cooldown. More cooldown helps. Cooldown is good. What could I say? Toxin. So this is a damage buff for your party. So everything you're poisoning and everything you hit is being poisoned takes 10% increased damage from your DPS characters, and also deals a little less damage, so that helps people survive as well. And Wreath of Lightning. This really helps you pull. So as you're moving around the rift, this Wreath of Lightning is kind of attracting enemies, and I mean, technically it doesn't help you pull, but as you pull, then they also kind of want to follow you a bit. So you're pulling them, and then they're also wanting to follow you because you've kind of aggroed them with the Wreath of Lightning. So that's why that's really helpful for this full Barbarian. Okay. To the cube now. So, without a Necromancer, I recommend you run the Executioner in your weapon slot. So, attacks you do will slay enemies with less than 10% health. So that's really handy as an extra, hey, you're doing some DPS, you're killing the last 10%. Where required, so that's handy. If you are running with a Necromancer that has a curse, this isn't required, but at the moment, if you're not, do run this. Other options, let's say you are running with a Necromancer, Necromancer's GG again. Vigilance, I like Vigilance. It gives an extra Inner Sanctuary on the ground, which can provide some more survivability for your party, so that's cool. Or if you're running speeds, so something a little lower and you're going really fast, something like an Ingeom could be handy if you like it. So there are other options there. There's also, I think, something like a Wall of Man there for survivability. So there's other options there, but if you're not running with a Necromancer, I do recommend Executioner. Kuniak's Chain. So using the War Cry increases the movement speed for you and all allies. So that's really handy. Making everyone move a little faster. Again, as mentioned, you've got two belts here, Chuniak's Chain and Pride of Cassius, so one in the cube, one being worn is what you need. And finally, Jewelry Band of Might. So this is reducing your own damage taken whenever you use Furious Charge or Ground Stomp. So you're using those skills, and that gives you a lot more survivability. Quick look at Paragon. So, support characters. Please do not run area damage. So in your Paragon, doesn't matter if you've got the points, do not put them in area damage. Why? Because it can help create lag. Why does it do that? So it's a bunch of extra calculations proccing. So you want to be at 0 area damage because those calculations proccing, and you know, when we've got all those mobs grouped closely, that's a lot of extra calculations. They can cause server lag. So please, if you're on a
Z DPS character take out that area damage. But you can put your points everywhere else, so you can get your life per hit, your resource cost reduction. Gold Find does not help you in a GR, but I have the points there anyway, then I never have to change them. Defense, you want all points in there. Now, if I was, early in the season, and I'm, the order of these matters, I'd go resist all first, life second, armor third, and life regen fourth on my zBarb. Offense, so again, at high paragon, you've got them all in. Early season, what you'd be doing is cooldown reduction first, attack speed second, and then crit hit chance of crit hit damage. Doesn't matter, neither of them help you. Those two come third and fourth. In core, movement speed typically first, maximum fury I do second, and then pretty much rest of the points just get slammed into vitality on your support character, unless you have a real reason. Say, hey, I really need some more armor and throw some into strength, but this is how I run it. Okay, having a quick look at our skills now. So Warcry Veterans Warning. So again, this is a survivability buff. So it's increasing the armor of our allies, and it's within 100 yards. This has some really decent range. And then dodge chance as well, which is what Veterans Warning helps with. As I say, based on our Chuniac's chain, we're also getting movement speed, so great buff there. Ancient Spear Rage Flip, this is what we're using to pull the mobs. So we're pulling the mobs with this, keeping them coming. That's pretty much it. It also procs our Strong Arm Braces, so keep that in mind. Obviously, it's procking them when we're moving, but it also helps proc them on the RGK. Threatening Shout Falter, another party buff. Fantastic. So basically, when we're using this, all of our enemies around us are taking extra damage. So it's basically a damage buff for our DPS. Ignore Pain Mob Rule. Survivability for the party, absolutely critical. You can see there the base effect is 5 seconds. You're wearing the belt for an extra 6 seconds, which gives you your 11 seconds. So reduces damage taken for everybody that has it by 50%. And immunity to control impairing effects. So that things like you won't get frozen while you're under it, etc. Allies get a little less, so you get 50%, allies get 25%, but still really important buff to keep everyone alive. So keep that up. Really make sure you're trying to hit it when you're back at the party. If you hit it when you're away from the party and then you get back and you don't have it, your party's probably going to yell at you. Okay, Furious Charge, Merciless Assault. So to say, this is how I'm doing a lot of my moving. I do have all runes on this, so I've selected Merciless Assault, but that's not that important. From my Raycor's 4-piece, I do get all runes. You just got to keep in mind that because we are getting all of these runes, it includes things like Cold Rush, which freezes my enemies and CCs them. So just something to be aware of. Importantly, Dreadnought stores up to 3 Furious Charges. So that's why I get my little 3 here. That really helps as well. Helps make sure I can charge multiple times. But, we get a bunch of good stuff here. We get extra Fury, etc, etc. Okay. And then Ground Stomp, Wrenching Smash. So this is what's pulling the mobs. As I say, it's going to pull stuff that isn't on CC. So Ground Stomp, when you use it, it's a knockback. It's 40% CC resistance. Once you've done a couple, they're not going to respond anymore. So keep in mind you've got other CC there, like on your charge. So that's why you're trying not to charge when you get into the pack. So you can Ground Stomp it as cleanly as possible. And trying to leave, you don't want to over Ground Stomp or everything gets CC'd as well. That's effectively the pull you're doing here. Okay, passive. So, Nerves of Steel, Cheat Death. Gotta love a Cheat Death. Relentless. So, when I'm low life, basically, I get damage reduction, skills costing less, etc. So it's going to help keep me alive. Superstition, similarly, it's all about survivability. So non-physical damage reduction and a chance for extra fury. Inspiring Present, this is about our shouts, particularly our Warcry Threatening Shout. So Warcry, base time that affects is, I don't actually know, it doesn't tell me right there, but basically it doubles the duration of my shout, both my Warcry and my Threatening Shout Falter, the one that's making the mobs take more damage. So that's really handy as a great extra buff to give everybody extra shouts that help support the party. Okay. I think that's it. If I missed anything, I'm sorry. Drop me a question in the comments. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks very much for watching, and GG!